I'm in awe of the camera work in this film throughout. That's not something to improve. That's just something I wanted to add. So,
welcome back to the Modern Horror Stories podcast with Jamie, Dave, and today our special guest, Rosanna Vickberg, actress and filmmaker. And today we will be talking about The Shining. Yesterday we discussed the movie in general, and today we're going to be telling you 3 things that we think could improve this movie. Kudos, as always, to the people who made the movie. Stanley Kubrick's a genius, but with all due respect, we're going to try to make the movie even better. And as a word of warning, there'll probably be some spoilers to follow. So who would like to go first?
I can go first. There are a couple of things that I didn't mention yesterday. So most of them has to do with characters. So first of all, I don't know if I actually think this or not, but I would really like to see a version where, as you said yesterday, Dave, Jack goes from a 1 to a 10 instead of a 4 to a 10. So we see more of an arc in his characters, because I think it would be, although this is scary too, and this builds tension from the beginning, I think it could be scarier to start him off as a really nice guy, a really nice dad. Because then I think we would get more fear out of Wendy and Danny as well. But on the other hand, I think this is what makes The Shining. But if I were to see another version, that is something that I would like to see. The other thing that has to do with characters is some backstory. And I think it's done on purpose, again, not to have their backstory and for us to kind of get some clues and make our own conclusions. But I think just a little bit more backstory would be good. And I think some of the backstory actually was cut out. I think it was something about Jack actually hurting one of his students, and that's why he was fired, and that's why it was very important that he came to do this work, because it was a way for him to make a living, without doing any of that. I think it would just, maybe we got a hint of that, I don't know, because now I read so much about what's supposed to be with that, but just a little bit of that, just getting a little bit more of suggestion that he's capable of violence or something like that, and just to care a bit more for the characters. Like, I do care a lot for the characters, but I could have cared maybe more if I knew a bit more about Wendy and Danny, for example. I think, but again, I think it's done on purpose probably, but it would have been interesting to see a version like that. And that leads me to the final thing, which is the foreshadowing of what was about to happen, like him trying to murder his family. I think it also would have been interesting if we got this backstory of that other guy that killed his whole family a bit slower, if we got some clues leading up to that, instead of getting it bang on at the beginning, this man was here, he was isolated just like you, and then he killed his whole family with an axe. In a way it's good, because we're scared from the beginning. Sometimes it's scarier to slowly find something out. We could still find out pretty early on in the movie, but it would be interesting if we were to figure it out ourselves a little bit more. I would like to know it just a little bit slower. And I think that's it, really. It's just too good. And all of these things really makes it what it is at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. But on the flip side, I also, as you said as well, I love it as it is. But normally I'd be begging filmmakers to give me more of a insight into the characters, because sometimes in horror they sort of skip over that bit, and you lose some of the engagement and the attachment to the characters. So that the stakes aren't as high really as an audience member, and somehow, even though there are elements missing from these characters, I still feel the engagement. I don't really know what the secret sauce is to that, but yeah. And similarly, I agree. It would have been amazing to for them, once they're already trapped there, to find out about the previous murders and how they happened. That would be so haunting and so terrifying. But at the same time, to just be told straight away, this is what's going to be happening in this film. You're going to see this father lose his shit and kill his family.
Yeah.
And so we spent like 2 hours waiting for that to happen. And normally, again, I would find that really annoying. But in this film, it was a captivating 2 hours.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm definitely like pushing it just to find a fault.
Yeah,
I really do agree.
That's fair. Yeah, I was also struggling to find faults. So on that note, one thing that that always leaves me a bit dissatisfied is how Jack dies. It feels like we come up towards a climax and then it sort of just fizzles out. And maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing, but not every film has to follow the same sort of trajectory, but it just felt kind of unsatisfying that he just sat down and then we just snap flash to the next day and he's dead. I don't know how that could be improved. Well, perhaps as Dave was mentioning yesterday, there's the Stephen King's version of it, which has a very different ending. And I'm sure Stephen King would say that would improve the ending of this film. But just something to make that more of a moment rather than just we skip ahead to him being dead. Speaking of the ending, though, I loved the way it ended with that music, and and me and Gabby were singing it all the way home from the cinema. Like, it was that what a way to end this horrifying, disturbing film with this really sort of quite gentle, lovely music, but with a sort of haunting edge to it. I think the haunting edge is from the context more than anything. But the second thing I would change is the opening credits. I just thought they were so... I mean, maybe they were cutting edge for the 80s, I'm not sure, but they look so ugly and so out of place with this spectacular imagery. And as you said, Rosanna, like what a challenge it must have been to get those shots in the 80s. No drones, and so they've got some big film camera on a helicopter flying around the mountains, and I think the shots are flawless, but the credits, this sort of teal or turquoisey blue random font, it just doesn't. It really looks horrible, and I found it a bit distracting. And, pardon?
Lady Movie Maker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like they were just like. But the sad thing is that they probably had to put a lot of effort and work to get those credits in. They couldn't just click insert titles on Movie Maker or iMovie. So my third thing is a little bit controversial, and I don't know if I actually want this change to happen or not. And that is that the ghostly things that happen are kind of random. Like, sometimes Jack goes into the ballroom and it's empty. Sometimes he goes in there, there's a barman. Sometimes he goes in there, there's a full-on party. And then when Shelley Duvall goes in there, it's full of cobwebs. And then when she looks again, it's full of skeletons. There's a lot of sort of randomness. And I didn't see the through line between all the ghostly happenings and what was going on with Tony and with Jack as well. It didn't actually bother me, but if I had to make a third improvement, that would be it.
I think I agree with everything you guys have said. especially the opening credits. Although, in a way, to push back a tiny bit, I think the fact that they're very 80s sends a signal that the film is going to be less good than it is. I mean, those credits make me feel like I'm going to see a film from the 80s that feels very 80s. And what follows is the opposite, I think. So maybe I'm happy to stick with the old credits. I have two very small changes. My third, I'll start with my third change, which you guys have already addressed, which is the character development and starting a little bit more positively with the relationship, so that we see the full descent of the relationship. Again, I like the way Rosanna describes it as an alternative version rather than an improvement. Because I agree. I'm not sure if it would be an improvement, but it's something that you do feel like you'd like to see, especially that first time you see the film. The second improvement that I would make is Danny's reactions. I think Danny is fantastic. I think the actor who plays that character is absolutely amazing throughout. However, some of his reactions I find a little jarring and a little cliched. And it often jumps to him for a reaction. And so I would improve some of those, I think, or maybe cut a few. And the last one is just, again, very small. When Shelley Duvall rushes into the ballroom and now it's full of skeletons at the end, I feel that should be a wow moment, and I'm really underwhelmed by it. Given the attention to detail that has gone into like the recreation of the ballroom, when Jack Torrance goes in the second time, it's not just him and the barman; it's the whole party of hotel full of people. It's dense with detail. And in comparison, the room full of skeletons feels pretty much stock 80s horror film for me. In fact, probably average 80s horror film for me. And I felt like it could have really pulled out the stops on that particular scene. And I've got the feeling that Stanley Kubrick actually cut it for later versions of the film.
The UK version, he cut it, and he cut like 30 minutes of the whole film, I think, actually, or something.
That's
like
right, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think you would have cut it if it had been a more convincing. It was just a bunch of skeletons sitting in chairs, and I feel like he could have done a lot better, given the budget they had, given the attention to detail he applied every other scene. I felt like that one was a disappointment. So they're my small changes. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add or change, or?
I think I'm just in awe of the set, the location, the maze, and as Rosanna was saying yesterday about the Steadicam work, it's incredible, and so much of the film is a character running through the center of a corridor. Like you said, there's so much symmetry, running through a center of a corridor, being followed by a camera. And yeah, I was constantly thinking about the camera, but I think that was just from a critical place. As an audience member, I don't think you would be thinking about the camera. It flows so naturally. I'm in awe of the camera work in this film throughout. That's not something to improve. That's just something I wanted to add. So
on that note, if you got ways to improve The Shining, maybe you didn't feel like it was a masterpiece. Maybe you felt Stephen King did it better. How would you improve this film? Put your comments below in the chat, and we will see you soon for another Modern Horror Stories podcast.